we've got to get back to what's rational, not what's emotional. The president just needs to look at this and say, we need to stop this. And he can be a world historical figure.
So Colonel Douglas Macgregor, in my mind, one of the greatest American foreign policy minds in the world, recently went on Tucker Carlson's podcast to talk about a host of issues, and among them, the war in Ukraine. And he expresses his disgruntlement over the proposed ceasefire, which Russia essentially responded to as, yeah, we agree in principle, but here's like these 20 points we would need to happen to agree to that. Macgregor doesn't think that's a good idea, even though a ceasefire is something that most non-interventionists should like, right? Well, let's hear what he has to say to it and react.
Well, I think there's some positive things in there, but we're missing the boat with the Russians again. We don't understand that if Ukraine is going to be neutral, why are we continuing to supply it with weapons at this stage? It's the Ukrainians that have to stop fighting. The Russians will stop when they see evidence that the Ukrainian force is defeated or quits. That hasn't happened yet, not with these attacks that just occurred over Moscow. So the Russians are asking the question, you're the ones keeping this monster alive. You created the monster is fatally wounded, and you keep putting it on life support. Do you really want an end to this war? I mean, imagine if we were dealing with a similar enemy in Mexico, and we found out that the Russians and the Chinese had provided vast quantities of equipment and assistance to the Mexicans who were trying to fight us and regain control of the Southwest. And we defeated them and driven them back out of the country, and they refused to stop. They continue to fight. We say, well, if you want this war to end, tell them to stop fighting, put down their weapons, and back out. And if they won't do that, then we have to do what? March into Mexico and crush them.
So I have to agree with Colonel Macgregor here. What he referred to as far as attacks in Moscow is shortly after the U.S. restored military aid and intelligence aid to Ukraine again, which I just can't fathom how idiotic that is too. Ukraine started to launch some drone strikes against Moscow, and that was interesting, I suppose. It should be noted that, he's saying, well, Russia's essentially in the driver's seat, so it'd be easy for anyone to say, oh, Russia just has to get up and leave, but there's nothing more idiotic than that in terms of what's realistic. Pigs will fly faster than the Russians will get out of Crimea and get out of the Donbass, but it really is just the U.S. aid that's propping up this Ukrainian regime, and it really seemed like Zelensky might have been done forever politically after that liaison in the White House. But Trump always follows, some of his greatest moments with some of the stupidest blunders, if you ask me. And I think Macgregor's right on this.
I mean, this is the best analogy that I can come up with to make people understand what we're dealing with. So if you want normalized relations with Russia, go back to what we said at the beginning. End the military support for this heinous regime. This is guilty of all sorts of terrible war crimes anyway. All the things that Russia was accused of are things that the Ukrainians have done. So let's get out of this.
Well, they tried to, and they assassinated people. They tried to assassinate a couple people I know personally.
Yes.
Well, fact, not guessing. So, I consider that government, not the Ukrainians. I think the Ukrainians, as you said, are valiant and decent. And an awful lot of them are Christians. I know a lot of Ukrainians, and I couldn't think more highly of them. But I think that their government is totally evil.
Right. I mean, in a way, I actually not even in a way. I sympathize with innocent Ukrainians caught up in this whole, geopolitical chess game far more than I do with my own government. They have been used to the benefit of a world empire, the U.S., and because of the U.S. and NATO and its desires to expand eastward and provoke tensions with Russia, so many innocent Ukrainians are suffering. They have a ravaged economy. They've endured martial law. Eastern Orthodox churches have been closed. Oppositional political organizations have been dissolved by Zelensky. They're facing insane conscription mandates, and Zelensky keeps trying to lower the age for it so they can get more people. There's dying generations of Ukrainians. So I'm with Tucker on that one too.
Completely.
And so here's the thinking as far as I understand it. What do I know? But my strong sense is that the Trump White House wants an end to this war. The president campaigned on it. He thinks it's within his grasp. He also wants a more normalized relationship with Russia. He grieves over Russia's now permanent alliance with China. He sees how bad that is. It's not fixable. But bringing Russia a little bit closer back to the West is a good thing. I think I'm describing his thinking fairly. But for the purposes of making a deal, the thought is that you can't make a deal from a position of weakness. And so you have to show your teeth in order to get the other side to come to better terms. That's the idea behind throwing more weapons to Ukraine. Well, how do you assess that?
It's delusional. It's leading down the wrong path. If you want this to end, then stop it. You stop supplying it and get our people out of Ukraine. Make it very clear we're out of this. No more weapons, no more cash. We're finished. The British and the French can't come in and make up for that. Neither can the Germans. So that's all nonsense. You saw this Euro summit. They're going to assemble, almost $1 trillion to beef up defense in these countries. Good luck.
Totally correct. That's exactly what the U.S. needs to do. Withdraw all the aid, all the intelligence, and Zelensky will have no choice but to make a peace. He's just being held together through this patchwork life support based on the U.S. after Trump campaigned to stop aid to Ukraine. Trump said he would end the war in 24 hours, and I think few people thought that was even realistic, even his supporters. But it really seems like he's trying to play this double game where, he keeps this flopping fish afloat when peace is really within the sights. I think as long as Ukraine agrees to very basic requests by Russia, like you will remain neutral, and we're not going to leave the Donbas territory in Crimea, that they can have a peace. Until then, it's going to be thousands of more forces dying. Obviously, in an ideal world, I would like it that the U.S. never kind of expanded eastward into NATO. NATO never added new NATO powers in 5 waves of expansion, and Putin didn't invade in it was the 7th or 8th year of a civil war between culturally Russian people within Ukraine and non-culturally Russian people within Ukraine, because that's exactly what happened after the U.S. aided in the overthrow of the Yanukovych government in 2014. So
I don't see that occurring in Europe at all, because the average Europeans are saying, for what? They look at what's happening and they no longer believe this myth. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. They're going to be on I-95 in northern Jersey tomorrow night. Come on, the Russians are coming.
We have to kill them here. You hear Republicans say this all the time.
Crap.
Republican senators, really the worst group in the country, in my opinion, short of Antifa. But, it's a really good deal for us because we're killing all these European Christians there, so we don't have to kill them here.
Yeah.
And they say that out loud.
Well, they said that Lyndon Johnson was like, well, if we don't kill them here now in Vietnam, we're going to be fighting them in Los Angeles. So we got to get them now. Come on, that was ridiculous. I heard General Abizaid make the same stupid statement in 2004. Well, we have to kill these Islamist terrorists here in Iraq, or we'll be fighting them in our own country. It's all crap. It's the same old set of lies. It's sort of like the perpetual neocon narrative. It's 1936. We all have to band together. There's another Hitlerite on the horizon.
Yeah, every new target of the CIA is a Hitler just waiting to create a world empire. And if you don't side with perpetual war across the globe, then you're a Chamberlain. That's all we hear every single time, my whole life. Neocon propaganda, war machine propaganda.
This is a standard sort of gruel that is pitched to the American people over and over and over again in the Anglosphere in general, whether it's Great Britain, United States, or Australia. It's all nonsense. We got to get past this and once and for all bury it. If we really want this to stop, this is not about winning or losing. I think that's another problem. We got to make sure this is a win for the president. A win for the president is an end to this war, period. Number 2, what are our interests in Ukraine? Tell me what they are. What are the strategic interests that justify intervention in that country. Time's up. There are none. We've never had any interest in Ukraine whatsoever. We wish them well. We want them to be happy and prosperous, but we have never had any interest in defending them against anybody under any circumstances. We've got to get back to what's rational, not what's emotional. The president just needs to look at this and say, we need to stop this. And he can be a world historical figure if he ends the carnage in Ukraine by simply saying, that's it, we're out. And then turns around to the Middle East and say, stop now. No more mass murder and expulsion of human beings from Gaza or the West Bank or anywhere else. If he's willing to do those things, he's a world historical figure.
Totally agreed, and that's the Trump we got on the campaign trail. Remember, what he liked to say was, Ukrainians need to stop dying. Russians need to stop dying. I just want to stop people from dying. That's what I want. That's the Trump we need, and there's only one way to do it. It's to withdraw aid and secure a peace.
That's a dramatic sea change in the history, I would say, of the West and probably of the world. But instead what we get is, we can't do that, we'll look weak. It's sort of the argument that Kissinger made to Nixon. Well, we can't just leave Vietnam. Well, that's exactly what the hell we did, right? We left.
Yeah.
So, no, we got to go into Cambodia to show them that we're strong. How many people did we lose in Cambodia needlessly?
Yeah.
It's the same mentality. Just be honest. This is over. And then tell the Europeans, these are people that we're supposedly allied with, that they need to sit down at the table with Moscow. And we're happy to be there. We'll sponsor it. We'll set them up,
but
and
they've
they can
gone
sort
in
it out.
so far in the other direction. Like in the UK right now, even Nigel Farage, head of the Reform Party, which I think is the biggest party, doesn't have power, but it's by registration the biggest party in Britain, and it's the counterbalance both to the crazed Labourites and the pathetic castrated Tories. They won't say that we should end the war in Ukraine. Even they won't. I mean, it's like there's no party that I'm aware of in all of Europe with power that will say that.
Well, you said with power.
Viktor Orban, but that's about it, I think.
There are plenty of parties out there advocating.
There are.
AfD, the Alternative für Deutschland, is not a far-right party. I hear that all the time. Anything that challenges the status quo is, it's far-right.
Anything Applebaum doesn't want.
It's
right?
a bunch of nonsense. Yeah, they want an end to this. There's no question about it. None of this ever made sense for Germany under any circumstances.
Well, it destroyed Germany.
Yeah, the Germans have destroyed Germany, not the Russians.
Oh, I know.
And the Russians have no interest in destroying Germany. It's the ruling classes in these countries. They're globalist, and they need to be removed. And they will be removed. I'm confident that it will happen. The British have not had a real revolution since Cromwell, but I think they've reached a point now where they very much need a Cromwellian figure to clean house because the people ruling them are weak and inept.
Do you see any path to that happening?
I don't know. I haven't been to Britain for many years.
Really?
No, I have not. I think the last time I was in Britain was 2005.
There sure is a lot of chest beating from the European powers about, bailing out Zelensky, but that's never going to come to fruition. It seems like a political angling job, because if you look at public opinion polls, it's just so skewed in the other direction of not using military forces on the ground to aid Ukraine that these leaders, even, we know governments do things against the wishes of their people many times, but some of these polls are so skewed that it seems hard to imagine that they will.
Don't go. It'll make you too sad.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to somebody who worships at the altar of English-speaking civilization.
Me too.
And I don't even want to think about it. But I think there are still enough Scots, Welsh, English, and Irish there who will stand up and be counted. I'm cheered up by somebody like Conor Macgregor that stands up and defends Irish national culture, identity, language, everything. All of the Europeans need to come to Jesus on this one. They need to come very, very soon. And that doesn't mean they're evil. It means that they're defending the one thing that is worth defending, which is their own country, their own nation, their own society. So I hope that that will happen. We need to do the same thing. And that's why I went down to the border, not because, and again, this has nothing to do with whether you love or dislike Mexicans. I'm sorry. Mexicans are fine. That's not the issue.
Everyone likes Mexicans.
Yeah,
I mean,
everybody
no one's
does.
against
Yeah.
Mexicans.
The bottom line, though, is that our border is the soft underbelly of the country. It's a strategic vulnerability. And what exists in Latin America, in Central America, in Mexico is very dangerous to us. And if we don't wake up and start focusing on it, it will ultimately destroy us. How many hundreds of thousands have we lost? 500,000 people?
I don't get too fired up about the immigration debate compared to a lot of the other things that I cover on my channel, but I have to say it's pretty ironic when, much of the corporate media and the establishment left, doesn't believe in open borders for Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine and Israel's borders are like the most sacrosanct thing you can possibly imagine. They have to be rigidly defended. US aid has to go to stop migration of people in. But when it comes to the southern border, you're supposed to accept that it's just open. And if you question that, you're just branded a racist or anti-Latino or whatever. I think that is crazy.
To fentanyl poisoning. And somebody says, well, the Chinese, wait a minute. The Chinese ship ingredients. They're mixed down in Mexico. You don't like the fact the Chinese sold the ingredients? Fine. You can ban the Chinese from exporting to the United States. I don't care what you do. Don't go to war with China.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same argument that advocates for gun control use about guns. I mean, you build a gun and they want those companies to be liable for people killing each other with the thing that they built, which has a legitimate use. Macgregor's totally right here. He got into some other subjects there at the end, but can't help but think this ceasefire is just kind of returned to the Biden status quo. And this idea that Trump has to establish like a position of strength to solidify a peace deal is so stupid because we've had that for 3 years. I mean, yeah, it was Biden, and who knows exactly who was running that administration. It was some combination of bureaucrats and kind of White House staffers, probably. But it just is a return to what we've seen for 3 years. Trump campaigned on an America First platform for Ukraine, which means no more aid. His constituency definitely doesn't want more aid. I'm so happy if people stop dying for a while, but it doesn't even seem like Russia is going to agree to a ceasefire unless the same terms essentially that would take them signing a peace to sign a ceasefire. So I think Macgregor's right. This ceasefire is, as he said, delusional. It won't work, and that's why Russia hasn't agreed to it. The only thing that will work is a peace spurred by the lack of U.S. support. Zelensky will have no choice. The Europeans are not coming to bail him out. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you see that Trump's restoring aid to Ukraine has been a good idea for anything that I'm missing? Anything you think that I'm overlooking about that? Let me know in the comments below. And like this video, subscribe to the channel. And until the next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, no more empire. Peace out, guys. Thank you. Take care. Have a good day.